Welcome everyone again on this one of our workshops in graduate applications in medicine-related field. So those of who are already well-versed about what Project EduAccess is, the kind of work we do, they know us. But those of who are new, let me tell you about Project EduAccess. We know that access to higher education, leadership, professional opportunities is a privilege that most of the people from marginalized communities are systematically denied through cost, information, and dispositional barriers. But what is Project EduAccess? It is a modest attempt to improve inclusivity in these spaces by removing these barriers from marginalized communities in the global south. We aim to improve the participation and representation of individuals from marginalized communities in higher education and create avenues for personal, professional, and leadership development. So, how do we do this? We do this by 4 key interventions that include mentoring, counseling, and role modeling, information, advice, and guidance, capacity building, leadership skills, and evidence based advocacy. So now let me take you along the outline of our today's workshop. I just talked about the project EduAccess. You'll meet your panelist. She'll give you the overview. Then we'll talk about master's courses, course structures, nomenclatures, how to choose a country, how to choose university, and then we'll go into the PhD program where we'll discuss about the course structure, the nomenclatures, then again, how to choose university for the PhD, choose your country for the PhD, then general tips and career prospects, and then we'll move to the Q&A. So let's meet our panelists. Today we had our 2 panelists, but unfortunately one of the panelists, Anwesha Roy, couldn't join us because she was not feeling well. But we have today with us Anwesha Lahiri. Thank you so much for joining. She is a PhD in medical science, epidemiology from University of Cambridge, and she can speak in English, Hindi, and Bengali. Thank you so much, Anwesha, for carrying this forward. Now I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Yamina. Can I check that I'm audible and visible and everything's all right?
Yeah, you're audible as well.
Thank you. Right, so welcome everyone. To give you a general overview, we are going to talk about graduate application in not technically in medicine, because that would require you to actually pursue a clinical degree. So we are talking about medicine-related fields that focus on specialized training areas like public health, population health sciences, biomedical research, biotechnology, healthcare policy. So basically in the biomedicine and health informatics space. These programs tend to bridge clinical practice and academic research. So they would equip you with advanced knowledge and the skills you would need for addressing several healthcare challenges globally. Now, what do we really mean when we say masters and PhDs in medical fields or medicine-related fields? I'm going to give you a list of examples, but this is by no way exhaustive. This is just to give you a sense of what kind of courses we're talking about here. So if we put them into a few buckets, say biomedical science, this can range from applied genomics, different verticals of cancer research, clinical research in diabetes and cardiovascular disease and other metabolic disorders, more basic science subjects like immunology, neuroscience, psychology, biophysics, biochemistry, you name it. If you look at more informatics side of things, one bucket to look at is artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning. All of these are very up and coming fields, and you would have actually loads of new master's programs coming up and loads of new PhD opportunities in this field, because it's really rapidly developing at this time. Of course, when you come to robotics, you have a lot of medical robotics guided interventions, a lot of surgeries where medical robotics are used, and there are, of course, research starts kind of with master's training and PhD, and then you become more specialized in developing a technology that's actually employed in the field. And also there's an algorithmic approach to things. So artificial intelligence and machine learning can help you develop algorithms that would, then guide medical research or diagnosis or treatment. Another very allied field is big data, computational modeling, health informatics. This is where a lot of epidemiology, biostatistics, AI, ML guided medical interventions feature in. There is, again, this very big field of precision medicine that has come into place with artificial intelligence. And this is basically about how do you tailor interventions or tailor treatment very specifically, depending on an individual's patient history, metabolic phenotype, all of that. Molecular science, this is more fundamental basic sciences research. It can be in genomic medicine, novel therapeutics. These are just two examples. There are, n number of fundamental science research you could do. Med tech or medical engineering, this stream would, or this discipline would essentially combine science, engineering, and medicine to translate research findings into actual clinical practice. So more, innovative med tech startups is kind of a space you're looking at here. And last but not the least, policy and communication. So this is a very diverse field. Again, public health, you can have digital health leadership, health policy, health economics. You can even have something like media and medicine. And, Harvard has a master's in media and medicine now. So you could also pursue a journalistic career here, bioethics, health and healthcare delivery, which kind of also makes you like a manager in health systems, medical education field, healthcare quality, safety, all sorts of things. So lots of practical implementation here. And as you know, we've, in sciences, in every stream of any higher studies that you pursue, the world has become increasingly interdisciplinary. So don't think of these buckets as mutually exclusive. You borrow from one discipline to the other all the time. And, interdisciplinary approaches are always valued in any sort of higher studies these days. Now, we'll first go into a master's course overview, and then we'll move on to PhD applications and those overviews. So what do master's program basically offer? They offer a wide range of core modules, depending on what specialization or what subject area you choose. And ideally, you would either be working in a wet lab, doing experiments every day, or your project would be, or even your coursework would be entirely computational, where you would be sitting at a desk, you would have a lot of data to analyze, or sometimes your work might entail a bit of field work, but that's rare. It's rare, and it only happens in masters, which are much longer term, at least 2 years or 3 years masters. A typical structure is a blend of coursework and research, but most master's programs would purely be based on coursework, and only some advanced programs might also require you to do a thesis at the end of it. Again, it depends on the length of your program as well. Usually, now the length of the master's program varies a lot throughout the world. Just 2 examples from the UK and the US. Typically in the UK, all of these master's programs are 1 year, and not even 1 year sometimes. It can be 9 months, 10 months, or 11, 12 months. And these are, again, typically 2 years in the US. Again, not to say that US masters can't be smaller than that or shorter than that. There are 1 year, 1.5 year masters in the US as well. You would also be able to explore both full-time and part-time options in most cases. And typically another important thing to remember is that financial support for masters may be limited, and usually masters will not come with automatic funding, and you may be expected to explore additional sources of funding yourselves when you're applying to a master's course. Just nomenclature, this is just so that you're familiar with what you're applying to. In the UK and Europe, degrees are typically titled MSc, Master of Science, MPhil, Master of Philosophy, or MRes, that's Master of Research. In the US, the titles like Master of Public Health and MSc are more common. Australia also offers some MRes disciplines as a pathway to PhD programs. So these are all, they all mean the same thing. Some degree requirements might differ depending on what your exact degree is called, but basically they're all the same thing. Now, we would come to how you would choose a university first, and then maybe talk a little bit about the country. Right, so in choosing a university, first think about your program specialization, of course. So identify universities that specialize in your field of interest. Find the faculty expertise. So look for faculty members with expertise in your area of interest. They are the ones, or they're going to be the ones who would guide your research and academic journey. If you are not doing a research-based master's, then it's also very useful to look at the faculty profiles, because they are the ones who would be kind of teaching you what you want to learn, right? So it also helps you to know what they specialize in and what would you like to learn from them. And that, you kind of also fit that into a personal statement, and that makes your personal statement stronger, that this is what I want to learn from these specific faculty who are going to be teaching on the course. And an easy way to look at where your university stands is, of course, to look at QS ranking. So, of course, advice would be to go for universities which are higher on the QS ranking compared to those which are ranked low. Again, ranking is not the most important or the only criteria, but it's like a guiding principle, so that you have a list of universities which you like, but which are also ranked high enough, so that you know what other students' experiences have been and how they have been enriched from their time at the university, and so that you know where you stand if you were to attend a certain university. But by all means, don't just go by the ranking, go by what you would like to learn and which university kind of fits that best. Also, if you're interested in networking opportunities during your master's, internship opportunities, research placements, student exchanges, assess these partnerships. So when they describe what their program looks like, every university, when you go to their website, when you check out their course program list, they would tell you what are they offering. So in addition to coursework, what else are they offering? Are they offering industry partnerships or hospital partnerships? Are they offering student exchange programs, internship opportunities? These should also be quite high on your list of priority to finalize what program you would be interested in. I'm not going to go through the list of countries and universities here, but this as Yamini mentioned, this would be shared with you. The recording would be shared with you, and all the resources would also be available on Project EduAccess website. So this is just, again, a guiding slide for you to look at some universities in different countries. But please look at the QS rankings. You would find loads of other universities, or you may already know of some universities that you're interested in. Now, how to pick your specialization? So, a lot of times in academia, research, even industries, we do something called a root cause analysis, which is basically to find out what area of research should we prioritize. And I'm going to apply something like that to kind of offer you some guidance on how to pick your specialization. And in a root cause analysis, what you do is you start with the problem, or you start with what do you want to answer, and then you keep asking why, and you get to the root of what is required for you to arrive at a solution, or the solution that you're looking for. So let's start with two questions here. One is, what are you passionate about? And that is basically something that's going to come from your undergraduate training, research or work experience, internships, life experience generally, volunteering experience, etc. Then ask yourself, why do you want to study a master's? Like, what are you going to gain from a master's? Typically, what you're looking for in a master's is to build a comprehensive knowledge base in your area of interest, or develop a multidisciplinary skill set, enhance the training that you already have, or sometimes change disciplines altogether or shift your focus into something else, right? Now, why are you trying to do that? And this typically ties into your career goals, right? Or what values do you want to prioritize as you are now, an adult who is basically trying to find their place in the world? Is knowledge your main focus? Are you interested in knowledge and inquiry? So, more academic research-based disciplines. Or do you want autonomy? Do you want your independent research? Do you want to start your own company? Or do you want more stability? Do you want to work with a big organization and have a very robust but stable career in research or in work? So these are very personal questions that you have to ask yourself about your career goals before you decide on how you pick your specialization. So there are typically two paths then, academic path and an industry path. So if you were to choose an academic path, that would mean that, master's is not the end of academia. So this would generally mean you want to do a PhD or a postdoc, then move on to lectureship, become a scientist, or things like that. And then you have to ask yourself, what training do I need for a PhD? You may not need a training for a PhD at all. So you may not have to do a master's program at all. That is also entirely possible that you've, based on your undergrad thesis, your work experience or research experience, you don't need a master's and you can directly apply for a PhD. And in fact, in a lot of US-based PhDs, because they're longer, you already have a lot of coursework, which is very similar to doing a master's. So then you may or may not need a separate master's at all. So that if you're looking for an academic path, think about what training do you need to get into a PhD program. If you're looking at an industry path, now there are many industries in this area. As you can see that there are so many buckets to choose from. So again, what I'm going to share here is not exhaustive, but just something for you to think about. So say if you want to go into biomedical research, then you should focus on getting a master's in a specific research area, like say cancer or genomics, immunology, neuroscience, depending on what research company you want to work for or what research industry broadly you're trying to get into. If you want to go into pharma companies, they really value masters in genetics, molecular informatics, drug discovery, gene therapy, so more therapeutic-based masters. And both of these are quite interchangeable. So even if you do biomedical research, you would still be very well-suited for pharma companies. And even if you do a more genetics, informatics, therapeutic-based masters, you would still be suited for other biomedical research companies as well. If you want to go into healthcare policy, then a master's in public health, epidemiology, biostats, health policy, health econ, bioethics, all of these become quite relevant. If you want to go into management, it may not matter for you to pursue a very specific health-related master's. You can do a more generic MBA and finance, master's in management. You could do masters that focus on leadership development, things like that. And there might be some, very specific health-related masters as well that you can look at. If you want to do entrepreneurship and start your own company, then masters in medical technology, bioengineering, those sorts of fields would be more relevant for you. And if you want to go to consulting, you can virtually do anything. It really doesn't matter what masters you pursue. For consulting, you would have to do different sorts of case prep, and that's something you will become familiar with while you are in your master's course, and you would have to train for consulting interviews separately. So again, this is just a brief snapshot of how to think about picking a specialization that will actually help you in your career. We'll now go on to PhD overview. So PhD programs in medicine, medical sciences will always combine, they often combine coursework with intensive research projects. Sometimes you may not need any coursework, and that happens a lot with shorter PhD programs like in the UK. Students typically work closely with supervisors to develop an innovative research addressing critical healthcare challenges. And so because you have to work with a team and a supervisor, finding a supervisor who aligns with your research interests is crucial. Doctoral programs have a range of typical lengths. Again, just for an example, it's usually 3 to 4 years in the UK, 5 to 7 years in the US, but the length can vary a lot and be specific to your discipline and the country you're choosing or the university you're choosing. Most doctoral programs will also involve an interview after your application is shortlisted. So not only if you're applying to a PhD, so it's just not just the application itself, you also have to think about an interview at some point. For some doctoral programs, a master's degree may be a prerequisite, so please check that when you're applying. And PhD programs usually do provide financial support. Say for the US, if you are offered an admit, that comes with funding. But in some universities, you may have to explore additional sources of funding. Like most UK universities will not automatically fund you, even if they give you an admit, and you might have to rely on other sources for funding. Choosing the country, so UK and Europe are renowned for shorter PhD durations and with comprehensive funding opportunities, but you have to, they do not automatically come with the PhD necessarily. There might be some funded advertised PhD opportunities, which will come with the funding if you get the admit, but if not, or there would be other university-based funding or external agency-based funding that you can look for. And US PhDs often would include structured coursework alongside research, and therefore they would be much longer, 5 to 7 years. Australia also offers 3-year PhD programs, and they have strong industry collaborations as well. Now, choosing the program. So obviously you have to narrow down your research focus, select a university with faculty expertise and research projects that align with your academic interests. Think about supervision and mentorship, because you have to work with a supervisor, or sometimes you're supervised by multiple people. So look for programs with strong faculty guidance and mentorship. PhDs is such a long commitment. It will really heavily depend on the relationship between the student and their supervisors. So pick your supervisor well. Write to faculty early on and approach them, see if they're interested in supervising you, or interested in your area of research. You should find faculty who kind of whose interests align with yours, really. Funding and scholarships, investigate the funding opportunities that are available for PhD students at the specific university that you're interested in. This can include teaching assistantship, research assistantship, external fellowships, all of it. Again, it would be tailored to where you're looking at, what country, what university, what department. Research facilities, this is very, very important. So please ensure that the university has modern research labs and access to relevant data or experimental resources for your research focus. So you can't possibly apply to a program, proposing something very ambitious. And if the university or the department or the research group you're interested in, if they don't have the resources to support you, then you won't have a very successful PhD. So do your research on whether they have the resources to support your research. Right. Now, how to pick your specialization. This will be a rehash of what we saw before with slight tweaks. So again, what are you passionate about? Undergrad and grad training will influence that research or work experience. And then why do you want to do a PhD? Now, typically people want to do a PhD because they want a more comprehensive understanding of scientific methods and techniques that are applicable to their own original research. And they also want to learn to create and interpret knowledge in their specific field. So, and I mean, this is just one core reason why you want to do a PhD, or what you would expect to learn from a PhD. But again, the reason would be very personal to why you want to do a PhD. And again, ask why. Why do you want this comprehensive understanding, original research, all of that? Because what are your career goals? How do you tie these to your career goals? Again, there can be two paths: academic path and industry path. So academic path would obviously lead to postdoc, lectureships, fellowships, scientist and teaching positions. And this has to be informed by what is your research focus in the long term. Do you envision yourself becoming a university professor and having your own research lab or your own research group? And what contribution would you like that research group to have? And what do you need to specialize in to get to that research group? Say you're interested in structural biology. So do you need a degree in biophysics then, so that you could learn the technique necessary and have your own structural biology lab? Say you are interested in computational medicine. What training do you need to get to having a computational medicine lab, right? So so think about your long-term academic focus and then commit to a PhD, because you wouldn't ideally be doing multiple PhDs in your lifetime. And this forms a very strong base for the next steps to your academic research career. Now, in an industry path, again, many industries to choose from. This is very similar to what we saw before. If it's biomedical research, pharma companies, choose those very specific research areas: genomics, immunology, genetics, molecular informatics, etc. If it's healthcare policy, they would also, again, prefer people with PhDs in public health, epidemiology, etc. Entrepreneurship, same as before: medtech, bioengineering, medical engineering PhDs. Consulting, again, can be virtually anything. It doesn't matter. And you could, I know I've not talked about, say, journalism or more administrative positions, but you could also get into those sorts of things based on what PhD you're doing. If you do a PhD in health systems delivery or healthcare management, things like that, that could lead to more administrative jobs. Now, how to find the right program? So find your university or department of interest first. If you know the specific department or school already, then check their website, faculty profiles, application deadline, eligibility criteria, where can you get funding from, all of that. If you don't know the specifics, then if you know your university of interest, then go to their course directory. And these are just some examples of where you can find a course directory. I'm not going to take you through these today, but again, this will be available to you as a resource, and you can, start from here. Any university you like would have some sort of course directory where you can browse what specific course you would like to pursue. Career prospects. So graduates, like we saw that, there can be different buckets or different ways you can go from a master's or a PhD in medicine. Graduates can pursue careers in clinical research, therapeutic discovery, health policy, epidemiology, biotechnology, bioscience, med tech careers, also in academic research. Employers may include WHO, UNICEF for more health policy related disciplines, global pharmaceutical firms, top universities for more academia. And just as an example, an MPH graduate from Harvard often secures roles in global health policy or consultancy. Now, just a few general tips before we open this up to Q&A. So first, assess your qualifications for a postgraduate degree, see what is required. And if you have all of those, if you don't have something, then you would have to work towards getting that specific requirement, right? Say, of course, GPA grades, transcripts is something you have already. Look at test scores that are required for a specific degree. Say a lot of US PhDs would require you to give GRE or some sort of English language test. See if you have taken those tests, and if you've met the minimum requirement for your university of choice in those tests. Think about your research experience. Look at if research experience is mandatory when you are applying to a specific program. Look at what relevant coursework you've had in your field. If you don't have relevant coursework or relevant training that is required by a degree, then plan ahead and and if you really want to pursue that, so then you have to tweak your plan and seek out those internships or seek out that particular training, do that coursework, get certified, etc. Check if your program requires you to have attended conferences and have had publications. A lot of US PhDs absolutely do require that. Some don't, some do. So please check if you are required to have done that. And also, obviously, letters of recommendation. See how many references the program needs, and do you have all those referees lined up? Prepare your CV and resume, because especially if you are contacting a prospective supervisor, you would kind of be expected to send them your resume at some point. Conduct informational interviews if you can find grad students, postdocs, faculty, friends, or friends of friends, someone you know who seem to be doing what interests you. Please ask them if you can chat with them briefly. Ask about their daily work, their career paths, key decisions that they took, and that you might be able to take, to see if a similar path would at all suit you. And don't be afraid to cast a wide net if you have diverse interests. This is where people connect with people even on LinkedIn, and sometimes you just message someone just to see if they would be ready to talk to you, and you would be surprised how often people actually are ready to help. So do the LinkedIn search, or just reach out with whatever networks you have, and build a network of support, because this is it's a long few months of preparing and applying, and it's very important to have a network of support. So friends, seniors, students you may know in your university or department of interest, faculty who share your research interests, everyone can come together and help you prepare your application. Seek out research experiences and internships. They always help you in preparing for a wide range of options, even if they're not required right away. They can always help you later. For graduate applications, remember your interests need to be very specific. So narrow down your specific research interest. Don't be very vague about any discipline. Don't just say that, oh, I want to work in artificial intelligence. Tell them, what do you want to do with artificial intelligence, right? You want to develop an artificial intelligence model that helps predict the likelihood of a certain disease or something like that. So be very specific with what you want to do, and narrow down your research interests. Some programs may require you to directly work with a professor, PhDs or masters by research being examples, and you would have to, in that case, email supervisors of interest prior to applying to the program. Funding, of course, check whether your program comes with funding. US PhDs would, like I said before, would typically come with funding through fellowships, research assistantships, or teaching assistantships. You can also be a TA or RA during a US master's to partially fund your master's degree. UK PhDs or masters would mostly require you to apply to additional sources for funding. Like there is a BBSRC Council, an MRC Council, Wellcome Trust, UKRI. There is a very Cambridge-specific funding called Gates Cambridge. All UK universities will also have university trusts, which also offer you funding. So, and there are a wide host of funding opportunities available. So it's not like UK PhDs are not funded, of course. You just have to look for what funding opportunities are there. We'll quickly dive into, say, how to contact a prospective PhD supervisor. To avoid sending generic or mass emails, write very concise and professional messages tailored to each faculty member and highlight your interest in their work, include very specific questions, and please ensure your email is free from typos. Just as an example, in the very first sentence, you could quickly introduce yourself, mention why you're contacting them, tell them that, say, I am X, currently a postgraduate student in biomedical informatics at X University, and I would greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you briefly about your research and the genomics medicine program at Y University. So in the very first line, then they already have a context of what you're looking for. And then explain why you're contacting them more specifically. So are you seeking to pursue a PhD or a master's by research? And why? What are you interested in? So you may be fascinated by X research that they do, but then also please connect your current research or work experience with what this research lab specializes in to demonstrate how your skills align with this research group. Attach a CV, or if you have other relevant links to publications, or some people have a website or any other profiles you might want to highlight via links, you could do that in that email, and please request a meeting because you would have to meet at some point to have an initial conversation to learn about their research methods, collaborators, lab resources. Consider asking for additional readings and resources to better understand their work as well, and inquire about next steps. If you have to submit a proposal, you might have to submit a proposal. In most US PhDs, you don't, but in all UK PhDs, if you're applying for a PhD, you're typically asked to submit a proposal. So you would have to, or you would be expected to discuss that with the prospective supervisor in this initial meeting as well. Start early with your personal statements, demonstrate that you've considered the specific graduate program seriously, summarize your research work experience, etc. Highlight your strengths and indicate why you would succeed in this grad program of your choice. When you're describing projects, and I have seen this a lot in personal statements, people just list their projects and just talk about, oh, I did XYZ, but also highlight what was your role in XYZ project and what did you learn and how did you grow. If you have weaknesses, if you have identified like a drop in your GPA during a term, or if you've had a weak test score somewhere, and if you don't ignore them completely because the admissions committee won't, so determine how to address them in a positive light. For example, if there were any obstacles, talk about how you overcame those obstacles to your studies through persistence, determination, or how you undertook additional research training. What did you learn from the challenges you faced and how you grew from your failures? That's something people really, or admissions committees really, admire. Make sure, of course, that you get all of this reviewed by a peer or a mentor. And finally, last but not the least, please make a list of important dates and deadlines, set Google Calendar reminders. If you're juggling many responsibilities, have an Excel sheet ready with all of these deadlines and requirements by universities, programs of your interest to help you keep yourself on track. And Project EduAccess has had lots of different sessions on how to find a PhD supervisor, how to write personal statements, how to build your CV, resume. All of these have been covered in much more detail in specific workshops. So please revisit them if you would like a more thorough overview on how to get to these things. Okay, so I shall stop here and look forward to your questions. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you so much for your amazing presentation. It was so wholesome and it just covered, I think, almost everything. So now the floor is open for questions. Please feel free to raise your hands, unmute yourselves, or just DM me, either me or the panelists, the questions.
Well, there are no bad questions. You can honestly ask us anything. There are no bad questions, there are no dumb questions.
Yeah, just feel free. I think Anvita is like one of the a resourceful person who knows everything about science and almost, I think, too fascinating to know about even management stuff as well. So feel free to ask, like you can ask anything. So I think we have a question from Shaheen. Do industrial LORs work for PhD application in bioinformatics?
Yes, absolutely. I think they would be quite valuable, especially if your industry experience is tied to any bioinformatics kind of work. But I think in PhD applications, at least one reference has to be academic, but you can of course supplement it with industry LORs. All they need is for one of your referees to be academic.
Feel free to unmute yourself if you want ask any other question. And plus, let me tell you that as already Anwesha told that everything is being recorded. All the resources are available on the Project EduAccess website. You can even ask any other questions through emails as well. I have pasted the link of all the materials and recordings that will be available on YouTube.
Or, sometimes a lot of information can be overwhelming, and uh, that can actually make you feel like, okay, I have so many questions. Okay, right, I see another one.
Shall I read this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a question. After Doctor of Psychotherapy, I want to do masters from USA. Do I go for GA or GRA?
Well, physiotherapy, I think.
Physiotherapy,
Yeah.
sorry, physiotherapy.
But would you like to give us more context on what GA or GRA is?
If you would
It
just feel,
depends on, yeah, I don't think I fully understood what you want to do a master's in.
you can unmute yourself as well. Or you can explain in the chat, whatever you feel. Um,
I can generally try to answer, but I don't know what GA or GRA is. So doesn't matter what your initial qualification is. If you have
Sorry to interrupt you. I
Okay.
think I'm sorry, so sorry. He has given an explanation that it's a graduate administrationship or graduate research assistantship.
Right. Do you mean that you would be doing this alongside your master's? Because I'm still not sure how it's connected to your master's otherwise. So even if you have a doctor of physiotherapy, or if you have a medicine degree or a dentistry degree, generally speaking, you can do any master's in the US. I mean, any health related master's in the US, if that is what you would like to do. But I am not sure if your graduate administrationship or graduate research assistantship is very specific to something physiotherapists do. So graduate research assistantship is something any master's students in the US can pursue alongside their masters. And I'm sure, I mean, I'm not certain if what you mean by graduate administrationship is what I understood. If it's just administrative jobs at the graduate level, which are part-time and which can kind of partially help you fund your master's, then sure, of course. But these are things you typically do alongside a master's. I am not 100% certain if it's a separate or if it's something very specific to physiotherapy.
If you could unmute yourself, like our panelists will be able to explain better. Like feel comfortable, whatever you feel like.
Okay, great.
Are there
Hello,
any?
ma'am. Hello. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, you audible.
Mm. Ma'am, actually, I'm applying for PhD in UK in biological sciences. So what difficulty I'm facing is I apply to advertise projects because they're already funded. So, but they're highly competitive. So I have this imposter syndrome coming that will I be able to make it or not? So if I go to university websites like University of Oxford or any other university, like I was applying for PhD in infection and immunity. So what these advertised projects are, they're limited. For example, I have done research project on antimicrobial resistance in Canada, and it is only limited. Antimicrobial resistance is a very limited, it's very limited. So we have, like, if I see the advertised projects, they are very limited. So on the other hand, I was trying to like figure out, like I was looking at the faculty profiles. Hardly some faculty matches with my research experience. So I need a suggestion. For example, if I'm applying to Oxford, I'm applying for PhD in infection and immunity. But I'm not able to find, is it funded or non-funded? This is what I am like facing difficulty in. Like I only applied to advertised projects, but they are highly competitive. On the other hand, it's very limited. If I've worked only on antimicrobial resistance, or I can just relate it with antimicrobial resistance, and I can also relate it with that I have interest in infection and immunity. But all these university websites where I go and apply directly for PhD, the funding is like, I think don't think they're funded fully or something like that. So should I apply directly to these universities for PhD, or first I should acquire funding from somewhere else? So I need suggestion for that.
No, thank you for your question. It's a very important one. And please, I mean, rest assured, all of us feel the imposter syndrome. We continue
Mm.
feeling it from the first day we came here until today. So you're not alone. We are all on the same boat. But believe in your abilities at the same time. So
Mhm.
it's good that you've only looked at advertised PhDs. Sure, they would come with guaranteed funding, but they are not the only route to applying for a PhD in the UK. So for instance, when I do a PhD in epidemiology, and when I applied, I did not apply to an advertised project. I
Mm-hmm.
got in touch with the supervisor and I applied to Cambridge directly. I mean, you can apply to any program you want. Specifically for a PhD, of course, you have to get consent from a supervisor to supervise you, and then you can make an application, even though it's not an advertised project. So if you want to work on antimicrobial resistance, if you have your own project proposal, and if you find
Mm-hmm.
a supervisor in a UK university who's interested in the same area, or who has done work in the same area, or whose lab has enough resources to do that kind of work, then get in touch with them and work on a proposal with them and then apply with that proposal. So what happens in UK PhDs, once you apply, you would have different funding options. Say in Cambridge, there is the Cambridge Trust, which funds your PhD. There are some other external sources like the Gates Foundation, which can fund your PhD. There are funding that you might get from the Medical Research Council, from UKRI. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
like most UK PhDs, people who do pursue their PhDs, do get funding. They only pursue it when they get funding. Of course, there are exceptions, but just because a project isn't advertised doesn't mean that you won't be able to secure funding. It's just that your funding will come from somewhere else. So there is still no harm in applying, but you need to find a mentor or a supervisor first who is willing to take you on, or who is also interested in the same thing that you're interested in. I think, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and Imperial College,
Mm-hmm.
they work extensively on infection immunity, on neglected tropical diseases and things like that. So
Okay.
look at these two universities and see if they have, faculty who would be interested in what you're interested in. I do not know specifically for Oxford, which faculty.
Sorry, it was not Oxford, it was Cambridge. Sorry, it was not Oxford, it is Cambridge. I'm applying in Cambridge in PhD in infection and immunity. But
Right.
like,
So in Cambridge, you can look at the School of Veterinary Medicine, or veterinary
mm-hmm.
sciences. That is where they work more on infectious diseases. That is the center for work in infectious diseases here.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
But
Thank you.
yeah, find someone who aligns with your research interest and then write to them. And there is,
Yeah,
of
thank you.
course, there is no restriction on applying to a PhD if it's not advertised. You would
Yeah.
still have very strong chances of getting funding.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am, actually, what I find more like I applied to this PhD in infection and immunity because it included lab rotations. So I was looking for, like, because if I've only worked on antimicrobial resistance and I've talked to professors, so everyone was like that we don't have funding for international students. I have like in King's College London, there was one professor whose work aligned with my research project, but he had no funding for an international student. Likewise, I've talked to many professors, but they are like, we don't have any funding for international students. So that is kind of discouraging, and that's why I was looking for PhD which includes lab rotation, so that I have that diverse range of matlab maybe research experience, so that after 2 3 lab rotations I can go to some lab and then continue my focused research.
Right. There are
So
some PhDs in Cambridge which does that, but if you want to
mm-hmm.
do more, if you want to explore more, US and even PhDs in Canada are going to be a better fit because they're longer, and they would
Mm-hmm.
definitely offer you more opportunities to do sort of a lab rotation before you finalize what exactly you want to do a PhD in. In Cambridge, that happens for some departments, but it's not always routine. If you want to, I mean, of course, that has to be, if you want to do a program like that, you would have to find pre-specified programs which advertise that, yeah, we do allow lab rotations. So you don't have to come in with a specific project at the start. But otherwise, you would have to apply to a specific mentor, discuss your project with them, and then all of those would, I mean, at least you would kind of have an outline of your project even before you do lab rotations. If you apply to US PhDs, it would be, I mean, you can be more flexible in the beginning.
Ma'am, one more question. Is it important that I should talk to these professors beforehand, like before applying for my application?
Yes, I would think so. Yeah. Please speak with them
But there are
because if
some
you're
professors, they don't reply. I've tried and tried to mail 100 professors from last year, but no
so you
positive replies.
so if they do not reply, of course, they might be very busy and they genuinely might have
Mhm,
overlooked an email. So it's always a good idea to follow up. No harm in that. And if
mhm.
they've not gotten back to you even after you followed up, then maybe they don't have space in their lab. That's also very, very possible that they're already oversaturated with students and they're not taking
Okay.
someone in this year. So then it would basically be a hint for you to move on and find a different
Mhm.
mentor for your PhD. You should only include professors' names who are very interested in communicating with you and who respond to you, of course. But ideally, you should speak with them before you mention them in your application. At least in the UK, definitely. In the US, it's more flexible. You don't really have to speak with them. You can just mention the fact that, I mean, if you speak with them, then great. That's a best case scenario. But even if you don't, it's fine to say that you would like to work with them. And you can give a list of 3 or 4 faculty members who are interested to work with, like for US applications. But yeah, for
No, ma'am,
UK, I
actually,
think
I'm only
it's
interested in UK.
you're
I
more
know
interested
US
in
is
the
good.
UK.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm only interested in UK. And that is why from last year I'm trying to like find a spot, PhD spot in UK, but it's not working. But this time I'm rigorously applying to uh, advertised projects. I have almost applied to 10 projects. They
See,
are
that's
funded
an
by
excellent
different.
start, of course. 10 projects is a great start. That means that you've covered a wide range of options.
Yes, yeah, I cannot really. So I only done 6 months research product. Now I have a research gap. That's why I'm more like discouraged that imposter syndromes comes in every third day. I have
If
research
you
gap
are
now.
concerned about a research gap is fine. Lots of
Mhm.
people work in between or just take a gap year in between and then come back to academia or come back to work, etc. So a research gap of 6 months is no big deal. It's absolutely fine. But if you personally are concerned and if you want to change that, then alongside these PhD applications, you could maybe also look at research internships where you're based now or seek out some sort of
Mhm.
short-term research projects that may not be relevant for your PhD application right now because you've already made them, but
Yeah,
they
yeah,
would
I've already.
always still enrich your profile going forward. So
Mm.
it's never a bad idea to look for an internship, work somewhere for 2, 3 months and
So
gain some sort of
I'm
relevant
working. I'm
experience.
working as a. I'm working as a lecturer. So
Okay, see, then you don't have a gap.
yeah.
Come on.
I
I
have
think
a
you need to be
research
very
gap.
hard
I
on
don't have a
yourself.
gap, but then I have a research gap. So do you think
That
that
doesn't
this
matter. It's fine. I think that's absolutely
it's
fine. See,
is it
you're
fine?
yeah, yeah. I mean, in a PhD application, they would always value teaching experience. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Somebody in the UK itself told me that you have a research gap because uh, she told me that she has a research gap. That's why professors are not replying. Maybe they think that you have a research gap. She was also in the same field, like she was in physics. Like she was also a lecturer in this coaching institute, and I'm also working as a lecturer in post coaching institute. So maybe that's why that negativity is creeping in my mind. But still, I'm hoping that this time something positive happens. Okay, ma'am. Thank you so
Fingers
much for
crossed.
your
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your question and excellently answering uh, this. Are there any other questions or
I have a private question. I think someone messaged a question to me privately, so I'm not going to disclose their name, but I'll just read out the question for benefit of the audience. Do internships and masters have to be 100% aligned with our PhD applications? As someone who's just enrolled in a master's program, I'm kind of confused with my niche, like what topic I would be targeting then when I'll be applying for a PhD, and I want to do a PhD in Germany. No, not necessarily. To answer your question, your internships do not have to be 100% aligned with your exact PhD research topic. Of course, if you, I mean, if you've not applied to a PhD yet, you of course don't know how your research will shape and what you would be interested in a few months or a year or 2 years down the line. So when you apply to the PhD, all you have to do is you have to make a storyline for yourself. Whatever internship you do now, just pick up on how this fits well into what you would be wanting to do then. So if the subject area is not the same, you can talk about what skills, what transferable skills you learned from an internship. And there's always transferable skills. Like, if it's a wet lab-based internship, then just pick up on lab-based skills, or just pick up on the fact that how good you were with acquiring those skills at a rapid pace, and how good you were in contributing to teamwork, how good you were in leading a task that was given to you. All of these are very transferable skills that you can brag about, for the lack of a better word, in your PhD application. So don't worry about the fields not aligning. It doesn't have to. And I think again, it's a good thing if your interests change, because you're not expected to know everything when you start out, right? So yeah, focus on your master's and internship, and then just focus on a storyline that you're going to build when you apply for a PhD.
Oh, thank you so much. I think it's an incredible idea for all of us, that focusing for all the applicants, that focusing on timeline. Are there any other questions? Like the session is almost about to get over. Like, feel free to mail us, and feel free to mail the operations team. Feel free to ask any questions you want regarding, like, as already a panelist said, no question is stupid. So just feel free to mail us and join our other workshops. We have a lot of workshops or more coming on, specifically on PhDs. Do join us. Access our resources on the YouTube channel as well, and all the set of like for CVs and SOPs, we have specific samples available. Do access them as well. If there are not any more questions, then we can end the session. Yeah, if there are, we can just wait for 1 minute or two. You can simply chat or like unmute yourselves. I don't think so. We have any other questions. So thank you so much for joining us and giving answers in an extensive way. The presentation was amazing, and for all the participants for joining and listening us extensively. Feel free to reach out to us, and the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Yamina, for moderating so well. It was a pleasure.
Same here. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.